Jesus Christ, what did I just watch? Hellraiser Deader is one of the most draining, uninteresting, and awful movies I've seen in a long time. This is the sort of movie that makes me regret doing these full series reviews. Honestly, I have no clue what really happens in the movie. The plot is so badly written and the film is so unfocused that I was completely lost. But I'll try my hardest to try and recall what happens. Reporter Amy Klein is sent to Bucharest by her boss to look into a story about a cult known as the Deaders. The Deaders sent a videotape to Amy's work which shows them ritualistically murdering someone and then bringing them back to life using the power of the box. So she goes to investigate the cult led by a guy called Winter, a descendant of the merchant family. I think other stuff must happen because the film is an hour and a half, but for the life of me I couldn't tell you what that stuff is. Similar to the previous two movies, the script was originally unrelated but eventually turned into a Hellraiser movie. And to make things even worse, they brought the director of Hellseeker back to direct it. So this movie is a tale of things that didn't work to begin with being tried again and once again not working. The only difference is that although Hellseeker was just kind of mediocre and forgettable, this movie is flat out terrible. After the film finished, I spent a good hour thinking about the movie and whether I thought there was anything redeemable about it whatsoever, and I seriously couldn't think of anything. Similar to the previous two movies, Pinhead and his Cenobites are barely in the movie. Although to give it some credit, Pinhead has a large presence in the last half hour of the movie, and Doug Bradley's performance is far from terrible. He does a better job than he did in Inferno, but it's still obvious he doesn't want to be there. Everyone else in the film are just really bad. You could have gotten the exact same results by bringing in a bunch of people off the street. Everyone phones it in except for maybe Carrie Wura, but even she isn't amazing. And I guess this could be blamed on the actors, but I think it's mostly director Rick Bota's fault. This guy does a terrible job in this movie and all three of the movies he directed in this series. The films he creates are just badly constructed, confusing, and lack anything to keep audiences watching. And yeah, all of that makes this film just really painful to sit through. There's not even any inventive death scenes or anything to at least keep things interesting. In fact, I don't actually think anyone dies until the end of the movie. I'm most likely wrong, but I literally cannot remember any of the deaths in the movie except for the last few in the final act. And even their deaths are quick and underwhelming. At this point in the series, no one is expecting anything smart and deep like the first movie, but we're at least hoping for some interesting death scenes and well done gore. But this film has neither. Everything is just so cheap and forgettable. Not to mention when people do actually die, the death scenes are all done using really bad CGI, which is about as terrible as you'd expect from a cheap straight-to-DVD horror movie. The film is set in two different locations, London and Bucharest. However, all but I think 2 or 3 of the actors are American and speak with strong American accents. Like, only one person has a Romanian accent in the film, everyone else is American, except for like a couple of British people, I think. I seriously don't understand it. Like, it wasn't filmed in America, so it's not like it would have been cheaper to hire someone that lives there than fly out the American actors and have somewhere for them to stay. Like, surely that would have cost a lot more than just hiring actors that lived in the country or even city already. There's loads of stupid things like this that just make no sense. It's clear no one wanted to make the film and they just made it to make a quick buck. At this point, this series has absolutely no life left. I wish I could just give up and walk away now, but I have 3 more movies left. At least it's only 3. Hopefully it won't be that painful. Hellraiser Deader is another really pointless movie with nothing interesting or worthwhile. Although instead of just being dull and forgettable, everything about this movie is nonsensical and terribly made. I give it a 2 out of 10. It's fitting that we talk about Deader and Hellworld in the same video because the films were filmed back to back by the same director and both released in 2005 despite being filmed 3 years prior. Hellworld is considered by many to be one of the series' lowest points, and although I kind of agree, I honestly actually enjoyed this movie more than some of the other sequels. This movie is absolutely terrible. don't get me wrong, but his stupidity was hilarious at times. The plot holes and inconsistencies are ridiculous in the movie, to the point where you will undoubtedly be left super confused as to what you've just watched once it's over. The film is set in a universe where fans of the Hellraiser movies have created an MMORPG based on the series called Hellworld. One of the game's most obsessive players becomes so immersed into the game that they end up killing themselves. His friends all feel guilty about the event, but carry on playing the game anyway, because if your friend became incredibly addicted to something that ended up killing them, you're obviously going to carry on doing it yourself. 2 years after his death, his friends are invited through the game to a big party at a large mansion. The party is being held by a man known as the host, who's played by Lance Henriksen of all people. Clearly his career took a bit of a nosedive in the 2000s. As the party progresses, the characters all find themselves getting trapped in rooms where the host, Pinhead, and other Cenobites start to kill them off one by one. And the film then leads to this big Saw-like plot twist where, spoiler alert, it turns out the characters of the film were drugged and buried alive, and the entire movie was just their hallucinations. Each character dies one by sheer chance. One character accidentally cuts her neck somehow, another character suffocates because he's asthmatic, and another character literally dies from fear. But their hallucinations make it seem like Pinhead and the Cenobites murdered them. Does that sound stupid to you? Yeah, that's because it really is. The way the movie is set makes it so the events of the previous movies did actually happen in real life, but that the movies also exist in the same universe. So this is a universe where people know about Pinhead and the Cenobites because of the Hellraiser movies, but also these things actually exist in real life. But it never really explains that in the film. We're just led to believe that's the case. It's constantly like they've forgotten that the film isn't in this same universe as the other movies, because they constantly show pictures of the box and the Cenobites, and the host explains that the mansion was built by the guy who made the box in Bloodline. And that leads to so many moments where you're just left really confused as to what's happening, especially at the end of the film where we see the box being opened and the Cenobites appearing. I have to admit, I actually like the idea of all the characters being drugged and hallucinating the whole film, but there is a lot of things that don't really add up, like how the characters still managed to communicate with each other and how they could use their phones in the coffin throughout the film and then be spoken to through the host via them, even though they were never called by him. This film is probably the furthest away from being a Hellraiser movie because of the lack of Pinhead and the Cenobites. They probably have about 5 minutes of screen time in the movie, and I wish I was exaggerating, but I'm not. They're almost not in the film at all. This is basically Lance Henriksen's movie, and his performance is just terrible. He reminds me of Nicolas Cage in this film. Like, he's either putting no effort in at all, or he's just completely losing it. It's actually really funny to watch at times. The rest of the acting is really bad as well. No one puts in a anywhere near decent performance. There's a couple of smaller roles that have some of the most pathetic acting I've ever seen. Another big name actor who's in this movie is Henry Cavill, you know, the guy who plays Superman. Yeah, this is one of his early films, and you wouldn't be able to tell that one day he would be the star of some of the biggest blockbuster movies of the decade. Although, to be fair, this film is actually still better than Batman v Superman. Doug Bradley does an average job in the movie. Sadly, due to his lack of screen time though, he doesn't really get much time to shine. It's a shame because it actually ended up being his last Hellraiser movie before he handed the character over. So it's a shame he didn't get a decent send-off or anything in this movie. Is there anything good about the movie? No, not really. Just that it's so ridiculous that I found myself enjoying it much more than most of the straight-to-video sequels in the series. I kind of want to recommend watching it just because it's so stupid that you may find something to laugh at, but at the same time, I don't think it's really worth watching just for a few laughs. I guess watch it at your own accord, just don't expect anything anywhere near good. I give Hellraiser Hellworld a 2.5 out of 10.